Okay, we are live. And so, hello, everybody. I've got Ian and Melanie here from ET Connections, and we're going to go over how to help you go out and get your own UFO sighting and make contact, which is such an exciting and a wonderful endeavor. So, here we are. Welcome. Hi, Ian. Hi, Melanie.
Hi, how are
Welcome.
you?
Oh, good.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. How are you guys?
We're doing well. Yeah, very well.
Yeah.
The first question that I wanted to ask you before we get into this, just to kind of like whet the appetite of somebody who might be joining on at the beginning of the broadcast here, is why would anybody do this? What is the point of going out to make contact?
Well, I feel like it's like everybody's out there wanting to know more. Like the human race has this wonderful thirst for knowledge. And when we find something that's new, we just really want to delve into it as just kind of a natural human response. And this definitely feels rather new to society at large, although not so new to, say, indigenous tribes who've been doing this for what, thousands of years? So I think a big part of it is natural human curiosity.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna continue that forward on another possibility of, I think it's also about we always have that pull for a deeper truth and a deeper understanding of ourselves. And the natural conditioning of humans currently is to go outside of ourselves to look for that truth first. And then what we discover, like I know that was something, he and I certainly started realizing is the more we went out, the more we were told to go in.
Yes.
And so that then led us like, oh, and then so they just kind of turn it around back on you of if you want to experience more, go in and suddenly, things really open up. And I know that for me, when I'm a big inner work person, and I love helping other people with their inner work, and channeling and helping them through all sorts of different things. And what I found is the more I did my inner work, the less I actually sought going out or need or the feeling of needing to go out, because I felt I was already surrounded by beings all the time. We just aren't aware of this. And when I became aware that I'm always surrounded and can talk to them at any time, it's like, oh, it was just a feeling of no one's ever alone. And the truth seemed so much more accessible because I could get it whenever I wanted. And so I feel a lot of people, it's fine to go outward first if that's what you're really drawn to, but I guess I'm telling you, it's going to turn you around really soon.
It is amazing how it does that, isn't it? I mean, that
Yeah.
curiosity and that thirst for that knowledge about, the nature of reality and how that brings us back to um, within. And if you don't go within, you go without, and all of that kind of as above, as below. Uh, it's kind of a trippy idea, really, is that what is within us is like the kernel of the entire universe.
Yeah, I mean, it also with Ian, he was a really hardcore skeptic.
Oh
Okay,
God,
right
um,
on. Yeah.
Huge, yeah. And I've always just, I think, always been connected. I'm like, of course they're there. He's like, you have 5 minutes to talk about it, and that's about it. And but I'm like, I finally was like, all right, you Google it yourself and just see. And I think he represents, also another big faction of society that they have this paradigm of what reality is. But once you see this little crack in it, you're like, well, wait, what's that doing there? And you kind of dig and you're like, and you kind of just keep digging and going, oh my gosh.
I fell pretty hard in that
Yeah,
rabbit
he
hole.
did. He kept texting me. He's like, oh my God.
Yeah, tell us about that, Ian, because there are a lot of people that are just new to this. And of course, that is an aspect of being new to it, is that you're really working on your discernment and figuring out what's going on. And then somebody says something about like beings or entities or, being around you all the time. And it's like, what? That truly possible? What was your journey like from skepticism to understanding it better?
Sure. So a little backstory. When I was a kid, I was actually really afraid that aliens were going to abduct me
Oh,
out of my bed.
oh,
Well,
interesting.
me too. Commonalities.
No, yeah,
It was
totally.
it's very strange, but true.
And I always passed it off like, this is such a fantasy. Why am I doing this to myself? But regardless, I still grabbed my sleeping bag and snuck into my parents' room and slept on the floor anyway.
Yeah.
And there was one night where my sheets were starting to be pulled off of me slowly, very slowly. And I was fully awake and cognizant. And I was asking myself, okay, am I dreaming? Because this is very freaky. And my hairs are all standing on end. And the blanket wouldn't stop being dragged off. And I'm like, maybe it's my cat. And I was trying to think of all these highly logical solutions. But it wasn't my cat because my cat wasn't even in the room and my door was closed and all my sheets were resting. I had a very low bed and all my sheets were resting on the ground. So gravity wouldn't be pulling it off either. And it wouldn't stop. And I waited for 15 minutes and just continued to drag across my chest. And then finally I just yanked my sheets and like hid underneath them. Like, this isn't happening. And so after that, I just kind of fell out of it because as I was growing older, I wasn't really as interested in it, and I started getting, those like teenage hormonal things and social things started coming up, school things started coming up. I got married really early into a awful relationship, and then I I was without all the time. I never went within, didn't even think about it. And then we got together, and she started talking about like conspiracy stuff and things that things that like most people would just completely pass off, and I did too. Like, that's crap. I'm just not into that. And this whole alien thing, yeah, I'm sure there's life out there, but at the time I thought maybe they might be little amoebas on distant planets. But then, yeah, she started saying, look into it, do some research. And because I come from a graphic arts field, I did do the research, and I could tell the difference between what was staged and what was authentic. And the more I dived in, I really dived in hard on Secure Team 10's channel.
Okay.
He had really good stuff on there. There are some things on there that are not phenomenon, but a large portion is. And when I started seeing the comparisons with NASA's the solar observatory out there in space that's watching the sun, when I started seeing them literally blocking out craft, I couldn't deny it anymore. To deny it would have been to be in denial. And so that's when I really started falling down that rabbit hole.
I think when it comes to discernment, there is a lot of really amazing technology out there, and to deny that there's amazing technology that can replicate craft, would be ignorant. But that's where that inner work really shines, because as you clean the inner self, you really heighten your own intuition, and that's your compass of pointing you towards what is truth, for you at least. And we use that primarily. I mean, a lot of times, like, he'll look at the graphics, I think that might be faked. And there are other times, though, where we can't tell, like, we're just talking about videos, and then I'm like, you know what, I'm really feeling that that's real.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when we're out in the field, that intuition is really critical. That's critical for discernment, for keeping yourself, in interacting with safe beings, and knowing who's around you. Like, if there's this sudden, blast of just some type of, I don't know, negativity that no one else is, emitting, you're like, well, wait, and you can just kind of like, no, off you go. No, you're not welcome here. And, setting that intention also is a really important boundary.
That's kind of another thing people talk about too, is negative beings. Mm-hmm. And a big thing in the CE5 community is that there's no such thing as a negative ET. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. We only attract the positive ETs, which you can do through, good meditation and clearings and saging and good intent. But there are negative entities like poltergeists. They exist, but they're more like lower density, and they're already here on Earth, and you don't want to attract those
Yeah.
kind of entities.
Yeah, that's a real mind blower. I came to this through almost like the science fiction route, always being really interested in that when I was younger, and so interested in space and other, cultures and realities, and then just learning about these negative entity fragments or whatever they are on our planet. And I was like, not into ghosts. I'm not a ghost hunter, and yet this is something that you do have to ensure that you're in a safe place just to avoid being messed with. And they're very frivolous. Like the power of your own word is so
Yeah.
it's so powerful, and so you can very simply just exclude them from your experience just because you just keep yourself at a high frequency. But yeah,
Yeah.
but just the fact that you kind of have to, as you open this door to the world of ETs or extra dimensional intelligence or whatever it is, and then at the same time you're opening the door to like, oh, this is real too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Suddenly, yeah, you just start realizing there everything that you've ever heard is real somewhere. And
Eventually.
that's, just kind of what I say. I mean, if you can imagine it, I'm sure it's real somewhere.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
if we live with multiple realities and there are infinite realities, then surely every single thing is real. I should say real in quotes because reality really is subjective somewhere in one of those realities.
yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about more about safety because I think that's something that somebody new to this is concerned with. So how do you know for sure that you are interacting with in a safe environment with safe beings? How do you prove that to yourselves?
Well,
Location is important.
look, yeah, location is really critical. Like, uh, we do not, and we do not go ourselves, nor do we tell people or encourage others to go to places that have had lots of really strong grief emotions or fear emotions. So that would be like, you would not go do this in a graveyard.
Yeah.
You would not, I wouldn't even recommend doing this on any type of religious property.
Hmm.
I would not recommend doing this, certainly just anywhere again with really heavy emotions, certainly not hospitals. Might be okay at the library, but
Calling them in the library.
but location is really important because certain entities naturally kind of hang out in certain areas. um, the next step would be so that was where we wouldn't go. Where we would go are very high vibrational places. That's why nature is so important. It gives off a lot of negative ions and just a lot of color therapy. Natural. I mean, it's just naturally built to be a high vibe place, obviously.
Ooh, and negative ions sounds bad, but negative ions are the good ones. You
Oh,
want
okay.
lots of yeah,
Yeah.
because
I didn't know
like
that.
our houses are filled with positive ions because of our air conditioning system will accumulate them in the ducts and then throw them out. We're just getting inundated with positive ions. So we need the negative ones.
Yeah, that's why I like going out in nature and going to the ocean feel good and relaxing is because
Thunderstorms too.
and thunderstorms and rain, it's because they're packed with the negative ions.
Oh.
Yeah, so like what she was saying, go to those high vibe places, and it's kind of like meeting the ETs halfway in a way. So driving out to Mount Shasta, going to Joshua Tree, going to what is it, Lake Titicaca, I think in Peru. That was a good one.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a chakra point.
Yeah,
So
Sandia Mountains is a good one.
yeah, the Sandia Mountains.
It can be done anywhere, of course, but if you want to kind of
Staying away from known military bases.
yes, like don't hang around Area 51
because we've had lots of helicopters kind of come out when we've done it. We're like, oh,
Oh,
man.
really?
Yeah, so it's like it's just being kind of wise about if you were an ET, where would you be comfortable landing? Would you be comfortable visiting people out in a big open space in the forest, or by a lovely brook, or by a military base? I wouldn't be comfortable with that.
Absolutely.
So there's that, and then I feel though a really really big factor in not interacting with the negative entities is setting the intention that you only will interact with positive polarity beings and set that into, that's why on our channel we have some meditations of setting that intention, because it's really important, because then you don't have to mess with it. So you don't have to, you can just more sit back and relax.
Yeah, we did a whole episode about overcoming fear
Yeah, that's a
and
great one.
safety. Oh, thank you. And another thing is like physical safety. Like the most dangerous thing anyone could possibly deal with is probably another person, potentially. So that is a big fear of a lot of people. It's like, what if I go out there, there's a serial killer or something, and the odds of that
I
are
used to be that fearful.
right. The odds are so minuscule. I was reading a blog about a man who traveled the Pacific Crest Trail, which goes from the bottom of California all the way up to the top of Washington. It's thousands of miles of hiking. And he is a through hiker, meaning he started at the bottom and finished at the top in several months. And he's talked to other through hikers. And the biggest question they get is, weren't you afraid? Weren't you afraid of mountain lions? Weren't you afraid of some crazy axe murderer out there in the woods? And all of them across the board said, we didn't encounter any of that. We never encounter any of that. So the odds are really, really quite slim. And we definitely don't recommend bringing weapons out there. That's not going to set the right intent.
Yeah, I mean, if you're feeling afraid, I'd say just in starting, maybe, bring in your dog would probably be okay. It depends on what kind of dog. Like, if you've trained this dog to be a weapon, then I wouldn't recommend it. Because again, ETs, the ET peoples have feelings too. And they don't want to feel threatened. They want to feel that it's an environment. In fact, we put out an empty chair for them. We
nice.
bring food. We prepare like we're going to have guests. And, we've certainly had plenty of company, and really just enjoy when they come.
Yeah. And going out in groups, that's going to make you feel the safest. It's being in a group. Absolutely. At least 2 and hopefully more out there in the woods.
Of like-minded, we don't per se recommend bringing the hardcore skeptic friends, because, they also, the star beings, they also are going to go with the comfort level of the lowest comfort level within the group. So if there's someone who really, really, really does not want their paradigm shifted, they're not going to be shaking that, because that's not what they're here for. They're willing to come if they're welcome, but if they're really not, they're not going to show up.
Yep, absolutely. I've got a little mini story, which is interesting, that relates to the idea that ETs are people too. John Vivanco, who is a remote viewer trainer, and he's done remote viewing for about 30 years, once had a little ET appear at his bed, and he was absolutely terrified, and he's just like pushing back against the wall, and he's got fear just emanating from him, and this little ET is telepathically telling him, "Stop. It's like you're throwing bricks at me. Please calm down." Yeah. And so, yeah, like, of course, like being in the vibrational vicinity is going to allow them to be welcomed. That's beautiful about like having a chair and just treating them with the respect that you would treat any other person in your life.
Yeah, well, we definitely, I really strongly hold that they're people too. They have the same emotions. They want to be friends. They also probably feel nervous. And there are times when I have felt fear, and they help walk me through it telepathically, And so when we can get to a place of being able to observe your fear instead of being consumed by it, then they can even help in with that if you allow them. Like, they just want to be friendly. And so just allowing that space. So, practicing, of course, a way to work through your fear is to be in a situation that may cause it, and going out and doing this is going to be the way to do that. But then having that support to walk through it so you make progress. And
Yes.
they've certainly been very helpful with me in that, and very patient, because I really try to hold my thoughts so it doesn't like do a lot to them telepathically. Like, it's really come a long way, and I don't feel the same amount of fear at all anymore.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah,
But
it is nice that it does develop and progress. I remember a time when I and other people in my group were feeling afraid and worried about what is this, and also just about the unknowns too. So yeah, awesome. That video, by the way, that deal with fear one, which I've got here on the screen here, just the little screenshot of your thumbnail. It is such a good one, and I've got a couple of other examples of what you've got there. You've got things as simple as like beating the cold on a C5, which is a major issue in the beginning. You don't realize how cold it can get at night,
Oh,
um, as well as like ET contact and dream time. And that really funny one about the ET contact don'ts, that one
oh
is
yeah,
hilarious. I
that
love
was
that one.
really fun.
that was a
Yeah.
fun one to make.
It was
So,
totally impromptu.
oh, was
Yeah,
it? Oh, it was so good.
yeah,
Yeah. So, what
yeah.
got
We
you
had
in?
on it.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm sorry. It was just we had gone out one night and there just wasn't anything going on, so we just impromptu was like, let's just make a video anyway.
Oh,
So
really? You did that all in one
yeah,
night?
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It was
Yeah.
just thrown. Yeah, it was great. It
Yeah.
was fun.
Totally.
Awesome. Oh, lots of work put into it. It's really good. And lots of work put into like the video editing and just making it accessible and engaging for people. So what got you moving into this direction of teaching?
Huh. I haven't had that question yet.
Yeah, me neither.
I don't know.
I think it's just
It felt like a natural transition. It's like,
yeah.
this is something we should be doing. And
Well,
so
yeah.
we did.
Yeah, and we just share what we've done and what has worked and what doesn't work. And um, I think it's just a natural, yeah, just that natural progression as you do something and others want to follow and have their own experiences. It's like, well, here, I guess I see it more as helping than teaching.
It feels really important that this information needs to be out there. The fact that every single person on the planet has this ability to talk with interstellar beings, it just seems so pivotal and so life altering. We wanted to make
Yeah.
sure to do our part and share it.
Yeah, well, there's that epidemic of everyone feeling lonely, even though we're all together. And this just really helps to lower that so drastically. Like, you can't feel alone when you feel beings around you all the time. and that and that they're there and want to help and love you and support you. So it really just opens up this huge support team for people, and that would change the world in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really looking forward to a time when more of us understand like the nature of all of this reality and what will happen at that point. What do you guys think? Like, how do you think this is going to unfold?
Oh, well, I made an analogy with my mother-in-law just last night, and I said that oftentimes when things need to get better, they have to get pretty ugly first. Like when we were fixing up our house, our kitchen was terrible. And so what we did is my father-in-law and I, like, we just like gutted it, and it looked unlivable, terrible. And then we fixed it up, and it looked just so much better. So I kind of feel like things need to go a little haywire first as the old paradigm crumbles away
Mm-hmm.
and the new one takes over. And so I think it's important that during that time, and it might even be this year because things are looking pretty crazy out there,
They are.
but it's just a matter, again, about going inside and finding your center and finding your peace, doing the meditations, and really removing the programs that no longer serve you. And a lot of us have them. I know I sure did. I had a ton of programs that needed to go. And after a lot of inner work, they just aren't there anymore. And I think that's how we're going to move forward, is by cleaning house so that way we can live in a much better place.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that, when I guess, in the demolition process, you could see it as destruction or you can see it as making space for something new.
Hmm.
And so that's what I hold space for, is that we're just making space for other things. And, I certainly hope and believe that that new paradigm shift will be occurring sooner than later, because we're making space for it now. So I would like to fill that, just, but obviously in divine timing. And being okay and non-attached to the outcome, that it will occur in divine timing, and we can put our intention and our kind of our order into the universe, what we would like to experience, and then let it go.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And that's the nice thing about, I guess, the expansiveness that you can achieve with learning how to make contact, because it's kind of a prerequisite of making contact, is that you can come to this space yourself, regardless of
Mm-hmm.
what the external circumstances are like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, anywhere, anytime.
So,
Yeah.
so speaking of staying connected and not feeling alone, you guys have done live CE5s so that people who may not have a group of people around them, or may not be able to go outside, who knows, can hop onto the computer and have a C5 with you guys. How has that been? That, to me, that was such a fantastic idea. When I first saw that you guys did that, I was just like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And you like pull it off like technically and everything. So do you want to tell us about that?
Well, we certainly love doing the live CE5s.
Well, we were thwarted, I mean, as you
Every
know,
time.
twice, because we got that
Nice.
first one off, went really well. I think we were able to do it 1 or 2 times several months ago, but then we tried again, and the technical issues were extreme as far as like in-house technical issues, and then there were forced power outages
Oh my
affecting
gosh.
millions of people in California. And then the winter months hit, and we can't do it yet through our phone. So we can't do live on the phone. We can still do live on our computer, but we have to set the entire setup outside in the yard. And with the moisture, it's not so good for the Mac.
Yes, totally.
But recently, but we do want to get back into it now that spring is here. We definitely want to get back into the live CE5. That is really, really fun to do. And yeah, we use our computer. We use the cell phone hooked up to a Gen 3 night scope, and we just search the sky and lead a meditation. Yeah, it's great. It's one of our
Very
favorite
cool.
things to do.
It's so relaxing. I'll just chat, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the vibe that you guys create on those live C5s is just beautiful. I just so enjoyed watching the part of it that I watched.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks.
cool. All right. So what else should we chat about? Um, I guess I have some questions about um, uh, oh, and I've lost my train of thought here. Um, oh yeah. When you guys first started out, Ian, we talked a little bit of some of the questions that you had and the skepticism that you had. Um, was there anything else that either of you guys had that you remember having a question? What would a new person be curious about?
Hmm.
I'm sure.
Well, I think like our biggest recommendation for when you're out there and you have to fend against the cold is wear a lot of layers, but especially your feet. Your feet, they're going to be number one when it comes to getting cold. And there are things online called overshoes, and you put those shoes over your shoes, and they give your feet like I think 20 extra degrees warmth.
It's
Oh
a big
wow.
difference.
Yeah, basically insulating your already insulated shoes, hopefully. And that is really going to make a difference because when you're sitting out there in the cold, it's going to be really
Your
hard to
pos-
meditate.
Well, that and your positivity is not going to be there for very long.
Yeah. You might break camp early because you have to, because catching
Yeah.
frostbite.
Yeah, there's all
And
these considerations, physical consider limitations of being human.
Yeah.
I would also, for people who are new, to understand that just because beings, star peoples don't physically show themselves doesn't mean you weren't visited. And so really expanding the vocabulary of the word visit.
Mm.
Because again, with all that, when you start doing the inner work and when you start tuning in, you start seeing and realizing you're visited all the time. When we first started, it was flashes in the sky for a long time and with some telepathic communications. And we had a couple like daytime sightings, couple remote viewing experiences. But then what it has become mostly is telepathic, boots on the ground, just out of phase or just invisible, but they're there.
Mm-hmm.
And
I have a good example of that.
yeah, so do
You want to go first?
I. Well, my favorite example of that is there was a ship that was blinking for about 30 minutes in one spot. And then it just had this, I'm like, oh, wait, they're on the ground. They're over there. And just this beautiful energy of love, laughter, and joy just came over me. And for the next, I don't know, 30 minutes or an hour, I was cracking jokes like constantly. I had even yawned at one point and they were startled by it. And so I started laughing even harder because I looked scary, I guess, yawning. I'm like, "Nah," and they're like, "Ah." So I started laughing at that. And
My,
so,
what big teeth you have.
yeah. And so I just, was trying to be very careful of that because it was just unnerving them. But it was just funny. Like, they were really curious about humor. And there are multiple groups that we've encountered that are very curious and enjoy humor. And so they were just having this lovely time observing and just being a part of that. So I mean, for me, that was one of my favorite interactions. And I wasn't in that space before they arrived. Suddenly was, and when they left and told me they left, they always, are polite and say goodbye. We're leaving now. Then kind of went away. I'm like, oh, I was having so much fun. So another way to know that they're there is, that change of either like a wash of love or a wash of joy or a wash of laughter.
Or a change in temperature even.
Change of temperature. There are different ways that they let you know that they're there. And becoming more aware more aware of what's happening around you is really important, and using your peripheral vision. Really trusting that we actually have better vision out our periphery.
It receives more light than our central vision does.
Right, that makes sense.
So,
I heard that's even true, even more so at night.
Yeah, so trusting that, and boy, we see stuff out of all the time.
Oh yeah.
And so again, expand the vocabulary of what it means what visit means.
Yeah, and I just had a visit about 2 weeks ago. I was in a dark, like depressed state, and I mean, just because you do your inner work doesn't mean you stop feeling negative emotions.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you stop doing your inner work.
Right. What it means is you're giving space for it instead of bottling it up, and that's one sense of it. And so I was giving it space and feeling those feelings, and my brother-in-law had called, and we're pretty close, and so at first I'm like, no, I don't want to talk about it, and then I'm like, God, I probably should. So we were talking for a while, and I was outside, and I was in the upper porch, and I was leaning on the railing, and in my mind's eye, what I perceived as my own imagination was I was picturing like a light being moving across down below on the yard and moving toward the garage. And then the motion sensor light turned on down there.
Oh, no way.
As my imagination was thinking this being was near that area, the motion sensor light turned on. I was nowhere near. I was up on the upper deck. And so it floods the backyard. And I'm like, well, that's highly coincidental. So another aspect is your imagination might actually really be happening.
Right.
Which is so hard to decipher. For me, it's really hard to decipher. I just always think it's my imagination until I get physical confirmation like that.
And it's been because I've been, pondering about the imagination now for, about a year, and just really delving into, I think that for me personally, the imagination is a window into the other dimensions of what you may want to experience. And you can pull in from any one of those dimensions into that creation, because our imagination is what we use to create. That's how we then set the intention, is by feeling and thinking and experiencing it. And I think the imagination is just so much bigger than anyone gives it credit for, of what we're capable of doing with it and what we use it for. I think it's just honestly maybe even a portal of some type that we naturally tap into constantly without realizing it. I mean, if if this is how we engage, you know, remote viewing, or there's so much to it. And, you know, all of the star beings and peoples, they're all tapping into that as well. And so when we see things just like Ian saw, and how I see very frequently too, is really start to allow credibility for that and allow yourself to have the experience and just stave off the negativity even for a second, just a little bit more each time, and just it starts to prove itself. It starts to, it's just fascinating. Just don't write off the imagination as something that's not real. I think it's all extremely real, and it's just different types of real. It's real for that reality or this reality or that reality. I mean, all of these different dimensions. I mean, what do you want to tap into? It's just this amazing tool.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe it. And I keep hearing about how visualization is such an important tool to use to basically move into the reality that you want or to achieve things that you want to achieve.
Yeah, it's a critical aspect, but you know, with manifestation of what we've learned is, and what we use ourselves is, you know, visualization is actually only half of the formula. You need visualization and the emotion together.
Really feeling it.
It's like
You
the
need
Feel that
to
energy.
emotion.
feel it.
Yeah.
You know, if you want rain, go outside, wiggle your toes, feeling the mud, feel the rain on your body, feel the wind, like as much of the senses as you can bring in, and really grounding in that energy and that emotion and that visualization. And then, you know, setting the intention that that's what you want to experience at the same time. And then that non-attachment of, yeah, it'll come at the perfect moment.
Yes.
Yeah, our bodies reflect what it is we feel. So if you're thinking about a person that you're enraged at and you're constantly turning that wheel, your body is going to feel enraged and it will react in that way. Chemically, biologically, it will react. And you can do the same thing with a loving situation. So if you think about things you really, really love, whether it's like your dog or a relative, just or a circumstance in your life that you absolutely loved, and you think back to it like our honeymoon. I like to think back to that. It was just a beautiful experience, and you feel that emotion in your heart radiating that joy. I feel like that really ups your contact level.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, for sure. The emotional component is so important, and this is such important work just for our own self-development in general as humans because it helps to teach us how to emotionally regulate, which is just good for you in general.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's all very beneficial to every aspect of your life when you do this work, because it's all about your own personal experience. Yeah, I keep getting really distracted.
But another thing we could talk about is pre-thought. Have you heard the notion of pre-thought, thinking before actually thinking?
No, what's that?
That's really fascinating. And that's something that we've been working on for the past several months, maybe even longer. But it's the idea that before you have your thought, there is a what I call a pre-thought, and then you actually have your thought. So if you can master the subconscious pre-thought before having that thought come into being in your
Oh,
mind, then you won't even have that. And I think that is a prerequisite to having telepathic communication with a lot of different beings, because then you're better able to, I guess, like not overwhelm them, or perhaps not offend them with thoughts you really don't want to have showing other people, because in this reality we think our thoughts are 100% private,
they are so
but
not.
not right.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of identifying the thought before it even happens, like the kernel before it pops into popcorn. You have to identify it first. And that can
Cool.
be a little challenging at first. But when you really start to see it, then you can work on it more and more. Like,
Wow,
how have
that's
you been on that? Oh, sorry.
go ahead. That's okay. Go ahead.
I feel like I think it's really helpful in telepathy, or it can be really helpful in telepathy. What I actually feel is the precursor to telepathy is meditation. Meditation, because you're starting, it's more about starting to practice letting things slip through, and then eventually it becomes more of being able to just learning to hold the thoughts. And holding the thoughts is key for telepathy, because if you cannot literally stop yourself from thinking, you're going to overwhelm the entire audience of whoever you're around. And it also makes it hard to hear them. So you need to be, it's just that tool of starting to slow down the thoughts, or at least being able to just let them go. Because when you let them kind of go, there's a space that opens up where it's quiet.
Yeah.
So as you let them just pass through, there's a spot that opens up, and that just grows.
It doesn't mean you stop thinking. It just means you're observing your thoughts instead.
Yeah, but eventually, though, because last summer I had several cosmic peoples that were helping me with hold your thought. And working with them, they'd kind of go I'd start to do something else, and then they'd come back, hold your thought, and I'd be like, done. And so I would just be like, ooh, and I would hold it, and then they're like, okay, excellent practice. And it's just these little practices of just hold it for a second, just and then that stuff, obviously it's like a muscle that just really grows, but it's really important. But that also, that's why meditation, I think, is really important on many levels. But that's one of them, is this beautiful precursor to the telepathy. And then being able to work into the pre-thought really helps in making sure, that you're staying appropriate. Because once you start to develop the telepathy, you become more mindful of what you're thinking, and knowing that they are hearing you, and just being able to really start to navigate those waters. And frankly, we all think things in the beginning that are inappropriate, or when you're like, I'm so sorry. and and they understand, but it's just being humble and obviously taking responsibility for your thoughts. Just like it's important to take responsibility for your thoughts and actions in general, that does extend to the ET peoples. So, yeah, those are just wonderful musings and things that we practice ourselves. And we always share things that we practice ourselves.
Yeah, I think it's important to say, like, our way isn't the only way. It's not even really our way. It's just a way. And there are many different ways to achieve contact. And to say, like, we know exactly how to do it, and here's the formula, we can't.
Yeah. It's going to be different. I mean, and we've tried, or not even tried, a lot of it with contact is it's not even about trying. We go out and set the intention, hey, we would love your company. But if you're too busy, okay, well, that's all right too. There was a day, I really loved it. We went out into the forest, and we came across a park that had a sign on it that said plague. We're like, oh.
What? Wow.
So
it was a national park,
yeah,
and no one was there.
And so instead of like going within the park, because I was getting the message from the Sasquatch people of, it's not safe. Don't come in right now. And so instead we stayed in the parking lot, blared some really lovely music, and we're just dancing and just healing the forest, setting the intention that we were just going to bring some joy to that area. And just were singing and dancing, and it was just really beautiful. And we had some flybys and flashes of, it's like, yeah, come dance with us. So contact can look like so many different things. There is no formula. You don't have to meditate all night if you don't want to. If you're not in that mood, if you're in a mood to dance, or if you're in a mood to sing, or if you're in a mood to tell jokes, they love that stuff too. I mean, I would be so drawn to the group that is dancing and singing over the other one that's really serious, kind of negative, because they're just like really like, you have to come.
Yeah.
It's like, you're going to be kind of clingy.
It's so true. They are very playful, aren't they? I have a question
They're
about, so Melanie, you really have a developed, like you have developed telepathy, it sounds like, and also it sounds like your like sensory ability is like more advanced. Like I feel like
yeah.
Ian, I really relate to, like I'm not really sure sometimes if it's my imagination or maybe a communication from my higher self or a being about whatever it is. So how would you develop that more? How could us folks who feel a little bit like we want to get to that point, how would we get there?
Well, um, I I'm just such the big proponent of inner work, honestly. I feel that I feel that that's kind of the cornerstone to our experience in general because we go through the world with our colored glasses, not realizing we can change what color they are. We can change the prescription, we can change the lenses. If we don't like the current lens, we can change it. But the only way to do that is by changing our perception. Our perception is our entire reality. So all the beliefs of what we feel we can and can't do. If, if we don't, oh, it's just, I don't feel, oh, I don't think I know what that is. Well, maybe that's a self-trust issue. Maybe
Right,
if, and so we can, based on what you think you can and can't do, tells you what blocks you have and within yourself.
right,
And this spreads out to your whole world. So if you start working on self-trust issues, not only will you elevate your ability to have better discernment in this arena, it's going to affect your whole life. And that's what's so critical for people to understand is this work is not just about contacting our star cousins. It's definitely, the more you do it, the more they're going to take notice and, they are going to work with you in whatever way they feel is best for you. But they want you to elevate your consciousness, and that it means elevating your entire experience. So I would even just be like, make a list of, what is it you want to achieve? Like, I want to be really sure that I know who's around me. I want to have telepathy. And then in that going, well, here's a list of why do I think I can't have it? Why do I think I can have it? What am I good at? What can I do better? And being really honest with yourself on, I don't feel, like I don't feel I can do telepathy because I don't have self-trust. Well, why don't you have self-trust? And then it's just this big thing of this internal dialogue of getting to these roots is really important. And I know that the more I've always done, because telepathy kind of found me, and then I had to practice and work on it because I'm like, oh, well, that was cool. How do I make that keep going? And
Well, when you have a partner, it really helps too. And so, like, we'll talk about things, and like, I was just thinking that, literally word for word.
yes,
You said
yeah,
the words of my mind, and that happens to us daily. And the thing is, when you have a open, trusting, and loving relationship, then the person can ask you, oh, I was thinking these negative or uncomfortable thoughts. Are you thinking those? And I'm like, yeah, okay, I was, kind of a thing. And that helps to build the telepathy in the other person because you're not gaslighting them like, oh, yes, you
oh,
are correct.
and you have to be, because you can do this with a friend too, having a telepathy buddy. But you have to actually be able to trust them, and that if you're picking up on something that is uncomfortable, that they would actually be willing to admit things.
right,
Because we certainly, telepathy, again, is not just for the star beings. You're going to pick it up on everyone, including your mom, your kids, your dad, your spouse, you know, even your pets. So being okay and asking yourself again, seriously, are you okay with hearing the thoughts of other people that may be really feeling hurtful or uncomfortable? That's a real thing to take into consideration, because there have been some really uncomfortable things that, because, we work so well together and because we love each other and are really open, that we can talk and work this stuff out. But this is this inner work and stuff, all of this can happen. Everyone has the ability to be telepathic and to be really in touch with who's around them, and just to know who they are, and to know what they want, to know why they're here and visiting. But realizing and having the maturity to understand that this is going to affect, new pair of glasses.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not
Yes.
like the movie portrays. Like
Yeah.
Hollywood portrays telepathy like, I can read your mind. I'm so cool. It's very egocentric. It's not like that. It's like, oh, wow, that doesn't feel good.
But it's
But then
funny.
some of it's beautiful.
It's funny because it's almost as if when you like those new pair of glasses, it's almost like it's like you can see deeper into reality and what's going on. And so you're going to see the contrast of like, oh, here's this part of the reality, which is great. Like I want to talk to benevolent ETs that love me and are like willing to help me and guide me. But then, oh, look, there's some negative energy fragments that I don't want to deal with, or in a relationship. Um, yeah, like here's this person I love very deeply, and then also there's like these negative emotions or feelings or core beliefs about yourself and what you bring to the relationship that also get kind of like revealed with that new sight.
Yes. And so it can be a fun and beautiful path, but it does require emotional maturity,
Right.
and a dedication to truth, and just being honest and being willing to work through the uncomfortable parts. Um, I've done so much inner work. Um, it's always just been a journey to this long lasting happiness that we're all entitled to. It's unlearning. It's a process of unlearning. It's just remembering your authentic self. And as you do that, the beings just naturally come. Like